Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu, and I'm back with another Digimon video. So today I'm going to be doing another Theorycraft session on arguably the worst deck that came out of BT21, which is going to be Wind Guardians. So, yeah, I understand fully that this deck is borderline unplayable, and you definitely should not play it. You could attempt to play it if you want, but there actually is no real good answer on how to approach this deck because of how bad it is. So usually when going into deck building, you kinda need to have an idea of like what all of the cards are doing, what the synergies are between all of the cards, and then kind of just see what you could use outside of those cards to enhance the overall strategy of what this deck is capable of. The only problem with Wind Guardians is there's not a lot of them. So that's already like the big knock on Wind Guardians as a deck is your toolbox is very small and limited, especially compared to some of the others. So we've seen with Nature Spirits, with Deep Savers, with Nightmare Soldiers, all of these other decks that have a similar style and theming to them have way more cards in the pool that they had access to on release. So this just is extremely lacking. So to kind of like start things off, we're just going to throw 4 of each of the Wind Guardians cards into the deck because, you know, we literally have no other tools and they all really desperately want to work with each other. So the next big thing is just understanding what these cards are even doing. So now that I have everything loaded up into the deck builder, well, let's actually kind of see what the end goal of the deck is supposed to be. And the end goal of the deck is actually supposed to be Griffomon, at least as of right now. So he can Digivolve normally, or you could DNA. The deck really doesn't have a way to set up its DNA, so maybe just ignoring that DNA aspect for right now is probably your best approach. So that's kind of where I think like Wind Guardians as a whole is like really unplayable, is the fact that their best card, like their boss monster, at least if this is the current boss monster, doesn't actually have a good way to utilize him. So we're probably just going to ignore the whole DNA aspect, and it's just probably easier to just normally Digivolve up into him. It's still a little bit cumbersome, especially compared to what the rest of the game is doing, because we're a 2-color deck. We don't have that great of tools when it comes to actually utilizing both colors efficiently. So we'll get into that in just a moment. But understanding what this card is doing and how it's supposed to be setting everything up is ideal on figuring out what we're actually supposed to be doing. So we're supposed to Digivolve into Hippogriffmon. He has Alliance, which is good because it allows the deck to actually deal some extra damage. And then on top of that, it wants an extra body, which it plays out itself when we Digivolve into this card, because we get to play a level 4 or lower Wind Guardian specifically traded card from our hand for free. That's where the problem of this deck kind of goes, is like it only wants to work with Wind Guardians cards, so utilizing anything outside of Wind Guardians is kind of like, is this really going to work? The answer is most likely no. But there's a couple of things that we could try to leverage to try to make extra things work. It's just a very unfortunate thing that this deck is like very half-baked and borderline unplayable. At least in the context of like normal Digimon where it currently is now. But the additional ability of this card is when we attack with this card, we get to Digivolve one of our Wind Guardian traded Digimon for free, which is actually really good. Free evolutions, especially when you're attacking, is very powerful, but again, it's attached all to bad cards, so it might sound really powerful, but the end result really isn't anything that special. Cards, as we can see right here, fairly limited. So just from the onset, it's going to Digivolving into Hippogriffmon will let us play out a level 4, so it's either going to be Kiwi or Wood, and then when we attack with Griffmon, I think I said Hippogriffmon, but when we attack with Griffmon, we're going to Digivolve into a level 5 Digimon. So the level 5, so basically it's like, go into Griffmon, play out a level 4, swing with Griffmon, Digivolve into a level 5. So obviously the best level 5 evolving into is Digimon. So when we Digivolve into this Digimon, or when it's played, we get to unsuspend a Wingardium Digimon, which is pretty good because then that allows the Griffmon to be able to unsuspend and potentially attack again if you didn't Vortex to make that initial attack to begin with. It's like you swing Griffmon, utilize his ability Digivolve into a Daramon to unsuspend the Griffmon, so the Griffmon is attacking unsuspended, and the Daramon, if you didn't Alliance, at least it lets you have Evade. So yeah, just a pretty decent like Daramon where we just get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon, not anything too surprising, but it does have the redirect ability to actually have some extra defense, so that way if we have our Griffmon on the field, we could use him as the primary Wingardium card that we could redirect the attack to actually have some defense. So it's not like terrible, it's just not super exciting. And then the whole idea is you're going to sit on a level 5, so that way you can then ace and further bait the opponent. And Puppamon Ace is actually a really good Digimon because he has Blocker and Reboot, which is already pretty decent, but the on play and when Digivolving, allowing you to Digivolve 2 on one of your opponent's Digimon, then bottom deck something that's suspended is very strong. So I don't know if he's going to be a 4 of in the deck. Griffmon obviously needs to be, or Griffinmon obviously needs to be a 4 of because he is how the deck is supposed to function. So as of right now, the onset combo is we're going to Digivolve into Griffinmon, play out. I think like the better on play is Wood, and then use Wood to Digivolve into Daramon. But that way we can swing, get 2 checks with Alliance, unsuspend because of the Daramon, and then potentially swing for maybe another 2 checks. And that's kind of where the Wingardium's like option card comes into play, because all of our Digimon with Wingardium's trait gets Vortex, which is fine. So that way we could do like some extra Vortex shenanigans on basically getting like Rush and Blitz kind of all rolled into one, which is why having the Woodmon inheritable is really good and having the Mushroommon inheritable is really good, so that way you have Piercing, and then you obviously want to offset that with either Kiwimon having Jamming or Floramon having Jamming as well. So that's kind of it. In terms of like the Wingardium tools, you have like the Draw Engine Egg, which is whatever. You have a generic searching tool for your avians and birds and Wingardiums, which again, this is a vegetation that's playing with avians and birds, so you could try to leverage those other 2 types to try to better support this. But again, none of those tools really seem like they're actually lining up all that well. Then Kiwimon is just more draw power. Woodmon's just more suspending. Cherrymon is the defense, and then Daramon is more offense because of that unsuspend. So we could do like some interesting plays where we could like swing with Woodmon with Floramon jamming, then Digivolve into Daramon to be able to unsuspend, and then use Griffmon to do that whole line of combo. And then we could potentially line up like 5 checks if we have a good enough field. So I don't know. It's very clear that there's something here that they're trying, but nothing's too great. But I yapped a lot without actually doing any additional deck building past this and trying to understand what this deck is doing. I think because of the Wingardium trait, we kind of are better off not playing any extra cards that we don't have to. So I'm probably just going to be dumping the rest of this into consistency just to try to find all of the cards that we need. So the big extra thing is it's playing in blue and green, which is a pretty decent and well-supported color combination. So we have a lot of cards in blue-green that we can leverage. More specifically, we're going to be wanting to look at options and tamers. So as far as options go, again, we're trying to increase the consistency as much as humanly possible. So we could leverage this in a couple of different ways. The best way is obviously with trainings and memory boosts. And luckily for us, we actually do have a memory boost that we want to leverage and is on brand and on color. We also do have a tamer that is basically accomplishing that same type of goal and task for us on making sure our deck can be as consistent as possible. So I don't know exactly if we need 4 Davises, but we're probably going to need 4 Jade Memory Boosts. So that way we could just make our deck as consistently as possible, trying to find only specifically these cards. Then the other card, if we're going the pure consistency route, is going to be probably one of the best searching engines in the entire game, which is Ukomon. So, there we go. So we do have Ukomons we could leverage. So we could go a full 5 Ukomon route if we really wanted to, just because we have the deck space to do so. But realistically, we just need this one Ukomon. Does it even synergize with the egg? It does synergize with the egg, because when your Wing Guardian traded Digimon are played, we get to draw 1. So if Ukomon is just chilling on the field, and it has the egg underneath it, then we still get benefit from the egg. Even though this card's not specifically a Wing Guardian traded card, we still have ways to be able to use the egg. So that's at least kind of good at wanting us to run Ukomon to try to have more consistency. So between Ukomon, Davis, and Jade Memory Boost, we're already pretty good on consistency. Again, I don't know if we're going to be wanting to run like the full 4 of, so like maybe a 4 and a 3. Puppetmon being a 7 cost means that you could just hard play it for 7 sometimes, and that's probably okay, especially if we're running Jade Memory Boost. So that way we could have like Davis on our field start at 3, Jade Memory Boost go to 5, hard play Puppetmon, put them to 2. Not like the worst options in the world, but it's just trying to make the deck as playable as possible. So we do have a couple of additional slots left, so we could dedicate it to probably like a level 7 wouldn't be terrible. We do have some level 7s that we can consider. Again, we're going to want to try to stick with blue and green. So because of the fact that Griffinmon is part green and Puppetmon is part green, we're going to want to leverage more onto it digivolving off of the green side of things. So we do have like Quartzmon that we could try to run as like a floodgate to try to lock down the opponent. It's still searchable in the deck because it is green, and pretty much everything in the deck is searching for green. The only thing that isn't searching for it is the Floramon. Floramon's not exactly looking for it, but that's fine. We could consider running, do any of the Chaosmons can we run? We can't really run Volder Arm. It's asking for yellow, which Griffinmon is not yellow. Funny enough, we could run Talakmon, but again, this is the boss monster for Nature Spirits and has nothing to do with us, so probably not the best card to run. We could consider running a Examon, probably not Examon Ace, because we can DNA, but we can't blast DNA. We could technically run the old Examon, but again, I don't necessarily feel like it's that worthwhile of doing because we can't utilize all of the abilities on the card. So we could run blue stuff, but I think like the only other option realistically is probably Imperial Dramon Paladin Mon Ace, which isn't terrible. We could go like 5 or 3 level 7s just because we're not afraid to use them in a sense. I mean, I think like the drawback on this being an ace means that you have the overflow and we don't have any protection for it is kind of an issue, but yeah, it's just something to think about. Maybe like a 1-1 split is probably okay, so that way you can like tech for different things and different opportunities. So the level 7s, if you're going to run any, it really doesn't matter. And then we got like 2 option slots left, so we could just leverage more blue options to try to like keep tempo or take away tempo. So we do have a couple of like limited to 1 cards that we could consider, or we could run some removal because we're already playing in 2 colors. So it's kind of like here where you could be kind of flexible with the deck on how it wants to run. But I think like some of the easier options for us to run is like the one of Ice Wall, just to try to anti-tempo the opponent, so we could try to buy time in order to establish tempo. And then the other big option, where is it? Probably Hammer Spark, because it's also limited to one and it helps with our tempo. So that way we could try to gain a little bit more of an advantage when it comes to things. Because if we have Davis putting us to 3 and we're trying to just Evo normally into Griffinmon, then that kind of works for us because we could just use Hammer Spark, go to 4, and then we're keeping turn digivolving into Griffinmon. That's also kind of why like the memory boosts are really good, because then we have extra things that we could do. And yeah, this is already looking pretty clean. If you want to try to like leverage the more DNA side of the Griffinmon, we do have like obviously the end of turn DNAs that we could run. Oops. DNA. So we do have like a lot of good level 3 and level 4 Digimon that could end of turn DNA. So we could like Wormmon because it has end of turn DNA. We don't get the search, and using the search isn't very good. Technically, we do have Gabumon that we could run with end of turn DNA, but it is evolving off of blue eggs, so that's also fine. We also have Vmon if you want, so like you could, if you wanted to take out the Ukamon, leverage in some end of turn DNA, or if you just want to play a slightly higher amount of rookies, you could end of turn DNA. It's just the big problem is again with the everything being super insular, with Wing Guardians really only wanting to play with Wing Guardians. That's part of the big problem. Like I said, we do have avian synergies, but if you are if you're trying to leverage some of the avian synergies, like with Shoto as an example, then again, it just becomes a little bit awkward because you're utilizing only half of the card. It's not a terrible card to run by any stretch of the means, but like it only is really working with half of your cards, and that's part of the big problem, because we also have vegetation synergies that we could run. So we could run like Yoshino as another card because she is playing with vegetations, but again, that's only working for half of our deck. So she's like, they're good cards that we could use. It's just they're not fully working with the way the deck actually wants to play, and they're working with just specifically half of the deck. And that ruins a lot of your play lines and consistency on trying to utilize specific effects. Because what if there's a game where you don't really see a whole lot of your plant-based cards and you're trying to leverage plant-based synergies? Then again, that just becomes awkward. So it's more ideal to want to just boost the consistency as high as you could possibly boost it, just to try to find the cards that actually matter for the deck. And I think like having this is fine. We could try to run like some other good consistency cards if you really wanted to, but I think like this is probably the best the deck realistically is going to do without sacrificing a lot of space and memory for other tools. So like it's just a shame that this deck is like so bad, because it has a lot of cool stuff going for it, and compared to some of the other like family style decks, it does seem like this has a little bit more of an aggressive tone. And because as of right now, it's just limiting itself to the 2 colors, especially the best 2 colors when it comes to searching those out, we do have a lot of like consistency for it, and that's not a bad thing. It's just it needs a way to actually win the game, because sure, in the most ideal situation, we could utilize Griffinmon to deal like 5 checks in a single turn, but we don't really have a good way to actually end the game. Maybe you could leverage some of the Vortex cards, like Vortex Synergy. I don't exactly know how much, like we could technically throw in like maybe reduce a Puppetmon and play like a Medieval Gallantmon, because this card's just absolutely cracked. And then we do have like some other Vortex Synergy cards that we could consider. I think this is just, yeah, so like you could technically utilize Shoto in combination with the Wing Guardian because it has Vortex. So like there's other things that you could kind of do to enhance what this deck is doing based on the mechanics that you're trying to lean and leverage. It's just there's not that many great options available to you. And like, I just think cutting it simple and going pure consistency is probably for the best. Because like, are you really going to want to play Shoto as your memory setter over Davis? Like, sure, you could like reduce the Davis by 1 and run the Shoto, but Davis now is helping the consistency of the deck, finding all of the cards that you need in order to actually make your plays better. To enhance the deck, you could even like throw in blue birds or whatever, but the only problem, like, this is why Ukamon is another good catch-all card, is because like these cards, if you're not digivolving on its native colors, you have to be digivolving off of Wind Guardians, and that's the other big problem with the deck, is the fact that you don't have a whole lot of options in order to make your digivolutions clean, because like, what are our other like blue-green rookies? Not with Vortex. So as far as like a 2-color rookie to actually use for these cards, we really don't have a whole lot of options. Dracomon X Antibody, which has almost nothing to do with the deck, but it does have the end of turn DNA. So like, maybe if you weren't playing Ukamon, Dracomon, even though it does have an evil cost of 1, it still at least lets you have access at that end of turn DNA. But yeah, as you can see, for like true 2-color cards to be able to make your evolutions efficient still aren't necessarily that great. Outside of like additional level 4s that you could potentially leverage. Again, the options are pretty slim picking when it comes to this color pair. Like, we do have armors, which are fine. So I think like one of the better cards, you do have like Togumogumon as one of the better armors that you could run, and then obviously we do have the brand new Lydramon as a good armor that you could potentially run, because you have generic jamming on your level 3, so that way you could have piercing off of it. So if you wanted to like up the level 4 count, we might be able to like reduce the options, reduce maybe another level 6, so run like 2 Puppetmon. So like, you could consider maybe just taking out the medieval Gallantmon and running like a 1 of or 2 of the armors. I think like, because the deck wants to be aggressive, having the Lydramon is pretty good. So like, that might be a little bit better on the ratios overall. Sure, it makes your evolutions a little bit more expensive, but as long as you're able to like set up a Davis, you should be pretty good on still utilizing these cards in an efficient and effective way. So that kind of just goes to show like where you kind of have to play around with when it comes to what the options and availability of some of the cards are, and trying to get the most out of a really bad deck, so to speak. So I know this was a little bit on the longer side. I know this was mostly just me rambling on how bad this deck is, but this kind of just shows some of the faults and flaws in Digimon's overall deck design, especially when they're starting a new deck that's not well supported, because we're probably going to be getting support for this deck down the line, but looking at some of the other family decks, it really isn't worth any interest or investment in. It should just be like a cute, cheap budget deck, as long as you're not playing good cards. I hope you found this to be helpful if you're looking at building Wind Guardians in any capacity, because most people probably aren't going to be covering this deck because it's just literally not even worth covering. I'm doing it just more of a thought experiment, and like just the theory crafting. This deck is not tested at all, so take everything I built here with a grain of salt. Do some of your testing iteration on your own. But hopefully this is good enough to start you off on the journey if this is the deck that you really want to consider playing, because I think there is some good stuff going on here. It's just completely overshadowed by the entire rest of the game, and the support that it got is a little bit on the lacking side. But with that, I hope you found this video to be helpful and informative. And thank you all for watching. Feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below. And while you're down there, make sure to leave that like and subscribe, so that way I actually know you're enjoying this content. And with that, I will hope to see you all in the next video. Later.